take a moment to talk to you guys about using the bandsaw. The bandsaw is a very versatile machine. There are some woodworkers out in the industry that will use a bandsaw over a table saw because of space. It's a great machine. It cuts out curves inside, outside, can do resign, can even do straight cuts if you set it up and use a fence and use some jigs and fixtures. You can cut out perfectly round tables with it, with certain jigs or fixtures. Like I said, very versatile tool. There are a few rules that you need to be aware of when you're using a bandsaw. First of all, that the margin of safety, that means as close as you can come to that blade, is 2 inches. That means 2 inches in front, 2 inches to the side, 2 inches on this side, 2 inches in the rear. What about the height of this guard? This guard is here for a reason. If I was to cut this piece of lumber here, I'd want to adjust the upper guide assembly, and that's what it's referred to, the upper guide assembly, to 1/4 of an inch above the stock. Simply put, I loosen the lever in the back of the saw, bring it down to about 1/4 of an inch or less above the stock. Now the reason I do that is if for some reason I get bumped or I get hit or something, that my hand or fingers won't go into that spinning blade. Another thing that you need to be aware of when using a bandsaw is that a lot of times people will have a layout line and they get mesmerized by that layout line. Okay? You have a simple layout line and you start cutting along this line. What you don't want to do is get mesmerized and end up cutting your finger, because you're so engrossed in following that line that you're not paying attention to your margin of safety. So, that in mind, you never want to cut on a layout line. You want to cut next to a layout line and then sand down to the line using the various sanding machines that we have in the shop. Another thing too with this machine is it does have a foot brake on it down here at the bottom. You don't ever, with the fans on, they're only off for this demonstration. Here's the foot lever. If I turn this on, then I turn it off, you can see how many fingers I can cut. That's a piece of red oak. Now I know that my fingers are not as hard as this lumber. And I had no power to that blade, but yet it cut 1.5 to 2 inches a piece of red oak. So remember, whenever you're done using the saw, use the foot lever. Make sure that that blade is not spinning before you walk away. It's very, very important. Again, with the fans and the noise from the woodworking equipment, it's hard to tell if that blade is spinning or not. So when a student comes over here, if that has been left on, and they come over here and they adjust it, they adjust the upper guide assembly for something that was bigger, they run the risk of grabbing this, or their hand being here, and they run that risk. It's just a bad habit. I see a lot of adults do this as well, is that they will walk away from a bandsaw. It takes no extra time to stop the blade and walk away. And then you know that when you left this piece of equipment, that there was no chance of somebody coming in behind you and getting hurt. What about a bandsaw? What can we do with it? Well, we can cut, like I said, the inside curves and cut the outside curves. You can resaw a board. You can do all kinds of things with it. That's what I'm going to attempt to do with this line right here, is resaw it in half, so I can have 2 pieces. Now there's 2 schools of thought. There's some people that will say, there's some people that will say, you need to use a fence. There are some people that will say, no, use some sort of block that you can pivot off of in case your blade starts to track. Me, I tend to like to just be able to freehand it and go straight through it, as long as I have a nice straight edge on the bottom to follow it along. Now, if I was doing multiples of this, I probably would be more comfortable in setting up the fence. Setting up the fence, clamping it down, and then doing a few practice pieces and allow for the drift of the blade. The drift is how much this blade is going to move forward and back and side. No bandsaw has a perfectly straight cut. You have to allow for the drift sometimes. Okay? And that's not your problem as a student. That's more of the shop teachers to make you aware of that. As a student, you have to be aware, look, if I use this fence, is my guard going to be in the way? Okay? In other words, have I violated that 1/4 of an inch above the workpiece rule? Well, absolutely you have. So you'd have to make sure that you use push sticks at all times when you ran this board through. It's not a difficult thing. You would just use your push stick. This thing clamped down. You could just run it this way and then put your hand in the rear. I know you. Come on. I know you can't see me there earlier, but you would just use a push stick here, basically to push it through, and once you got it through, then you would use your hands in the back, and then you could just push this all the way through. Okay? But again, you are exposed somewhat to a danger. You have some open blade there. Myself, I would probably do it like so. And go ahead and try that and just follow the line. Taking it nice and slow and nice and easy. Well, let's demonstrate. What I'm about to do is resaw this. That's what I'm trying to do. Now, when I get close to the end, what I'm going to end up doing is taking this board and coming around the back of the blade to guide it and push through with the push stick, so that my thumb is not here, and then I get a nice little cut on the end of my thumb. Turn it on. Now this is narrow. It can wobble. Okay? Now, I would take this over and do a series of running it through a Y belt or through a drum sander and making these all the same thickness. I could possibly run this through a thickness planer, but I'd have to create a sled for it because of they are so thin. Okay, but that's resawing. Basically, you take one board, and you notice that I don't have a lot of sawdust laying down there. This thing's probably a little bit less than a 1/16 of an inch, or might be a 1/16 of an inch. It's a lot less than the kerf of a table saw blade, so I get a lot more yield out of this. Back to regular old bandsawing. Let's say I wanted to cut something out like this. Now this is just a piece of scrap that I used earlier. Alright, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and cut this out for you. This is a piece of scrap wood that I had from an earlier demonstration. And for this particular demonstration, I think this part here is going to be my waist. You might see something like this, if this was nice and straight, something like this on the bottom of a dresser or whatever. It's just a piece of trim. But a bandsaw certainly can cut this out. I wouldn't be cutting on this side here, because this is my good side. This is the waist side. This is the good side over here. So I'd want to be cutting on this side of the line. Now, this is a 1/2 inch wide blade. 3 TPI means teeth per inch. TPI. And to make a cut like that, it's pretty, you're asking an awful big, or an awful lot from a blade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make relief cuts on the inside here, and then I'm going to come back around and make that cut. Now, you don't want to go more than, say, 4 to 6 inches in a straight cut and then back out while the blade's running, because you run the risk of pulling this blade off of the wheel up top. There's a wheel up top and a wheel down below that this thing goes up and around. And if you say you make a long cut and you back out of it, especially a curve cut, okay, while it's running, you run the risk of pulling this away and off of the wheels and ultimately damaging the blade or breaking the blade. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate making relief cuts. And when these little pieces of pies come out of here, when I make these little cuts, don't reach for these pieces. Remember, the margin of safety is 2 inches. Just leave them sit on the table. They are not doing any harm to you at all. Do not worry about clearing that work. Okay? If you must, if you're one of those people where it bugs you, turn the saw off, stop the blade, then clear your work area, if you must. Okay? If it's impeding the travel of the blade, I understand that. But most times, that's not going to happen. Remember, we want to leave about a 32nd to a 16th of an inch of wood between the line so we can sand down to it. So we'll go ahead and turn this on. Well, first of all, I got to check the height. The upper guide assembly is not right. So I need to loosen this lever, bring it down. Now, some people are going to complain and say, well, I can't see, you know, so they'll raise this way up here like so. They'll raise this way up here like this. Well, you can see when you do that, you not only expose yourself to a bunch of teeth, but the blade's not as strong anymore for making nice, tight cuts. These guide bearings that are in here actually make this blade a lot stronger for making curved cuts. That's also another reason for having this upper guide assembly within a 1/4 of an inch of your work. It makes the blade that much stronger for making curved cuts. So I'll go ahead and start this up. Now notice I didn't reach in there and grab it. I used my stock to clear it. Again, I can replace wood. I can't replace your finger. Now, to get back in this curve, I'm going to turn it around. Okay? Now I can come in here. Well, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Come in here. Now here's something interesting that you might want to pay attention to. When you start your cut, if you go to the back of the blade, you're not doing anything. You get your guide position. You're not cutting. It's when you rotate in that you'll start cutting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that spot. Now I can line that blade up. Okay. I already know that for me to hook this around would almost be an impossible task. Now I've pulled out of it, I'm going to come the other way. Make one more release cut here. All right, so there you have it. I mean, it's rough, but that's why you have sanding machines. I still have my outline that I can sand down to. I would go to the oscillating spindle sander, pick out a spindle that was roughly half the radius or diameter of this, the right size radius. Inside here, I might have to do a little chisel work, some sanding. Same thing, oscillating spindle sander. And that's pretty much it. Now, if I had multiples of these to do, I would probably gang cut these together, maybe tape or hot glue a couple boards together, trace out my pattern, and cut out one time and sand them all together. So when I pulled them apart, they were identical. But that's how a bandsaw is used. You could also make a fixture that I have over here. It's meant for cutting circles, for chess tables, all kinds of things. It really depends on you and how much you're willing to spend creating jigs and fixtures. As a student, you just need to know basically what the safety rules are and how to come up to the machine and how to turn the machine on. Remember, review: 2-inch margin of safety, 1/4 inch above your material, relief cuts, straight cuts. Do you need to make relief cuts for straight cuts? Absolutely not. Okay? Resawing. When you resaw, you must have your instructor's permission before you start resawing. Any questions at any time, please feel free to ask your instructor. He or she will be more than happy to go through this stuff with you. If you didn't quite understand a part of the video, please rewind it and go over it again. Margin of safety 2 inches above the top of the work object, 1/4 inch. Cut on the waist side of the line, make relief cuts. Never have your fingers. That's one thing I can't stress enough. On your layout, never have your fingers directly in line with the layout line. Have them off to the side if you can help it. Okay?